Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about the top 3 best baits for February bass fishing. I know a lot of the country is already fishing or can get to fishing here very shortly. Up here in the Northeast, where I live specifically, Western Pennsylvania, we're still waiting. We're still hoping for a relatively mild winter. It's been pretty calm all this year. Honestly, we don't even have ice yet. Hopefully it stays that way and we'll be able to fish by the end of February even. We might be able to get out. But if that doesn't happen, March, we're going to be back on the water and ready to roll. So we will have some more on the water content coming to you in the very near future. It's going to be exciting. I have a lot of good ideas for this year. But for right now, those guys that can still fish, or these are going to be the baits that I'm going to be throwing at the end of February if we get out. That's what we're going to talk about here today. Starting with number 1 is going to be a jerkbait. This is probably one of the first baits I fish every single year. I fish a lot of smallmouth bass lakes. And even if it's not a smallmouth bass lake, I fish a lot of largemouth lakes as well. And in the Northeast, largemouth bass love jerkbaits. We have a lot of clear water and we have a lot of bass that chase either bait or bluegills and perch. So they love a jerkbait just as much as smallmouth do, it seems, up here in the Northeast. So choosing the correct jerkbait is very important, but it's more your retrieve this time of year. 2 jerkbaits that I'm going to use, they're going to depend on where I'm fishing. This one's going to be my smallmouth jerkbait, and that's going to be the 6th Sense Provoke 106 DD, which is the deep diving version. This is going to get down to about 6 to 8 foot, cover those steeper banks, that deeper water. Raystown, that lake is very deep if you've never fished there before. I'm talking it's 100 foot plus out in the middle, and these bluff walls are very, very steep. Your boat can be in 30 or 40 foot of water and you can be 30 foot off the bank. So places like that, I'm going to want that deeper bait. Those fish will come up off the bottom and get it, but if you can get it a little bit closer to them, it helps. So that deeper diving jerkbait, especially smallmouth, they like to hang in deeper water anyway. So that's when I'm going to go with that deeper diving jerkbait. And this guy right here is the Provoke 106, the shallow diving version. This one's only going to get to about 4 foot deep, but what I like to do is even put this on some heavier pound test line, and you can get it even shallower depending on where these largemouth live. A lot of times we'll have clear water with grass. That grass dies off in the winter, and you'll have some very new growth or some stuff that held through the winter in certain areas, but it's very short. So it might be in 4 foot of water. You can fish this in 3 foot over the top of the grass and catch those largemouth out of that shallow grass, especially ponds. I fished a ton of ponds in my lifetime when I was at college, all that kind of stuff. I love fishing a jerkbait in ponds at the very beginning of the year. It's probably the first bait that I'll throw. Even those ponds that have that green slime, what'll happen is that stuff dies back in the winter, and you can throw that heavier pound test and get this jerkbait above that green slime. And I've had some of my best pond fishing days on a warm sunny day after the winter has come to an end, throwing a jerkbait over top of that green slime. So very important that you can do either one of those techniques. That's why I carry both of these jerkbaits with me. It'll just depend on where I'm at. Sometimes if I'm at a lake and I'm on my boat, I can have both tied on and go from one to the other. If I'm at a pond, I'll usually choose one or the other and fish with it for the day. When it comes to color selection, you gotta have some type of shad pattern. Depending on your water clarity is what I'm gonna pick. A little bit stained water, I'm gonna go with something solid and I can't see through it. So whether it's just a natural shad pattern or like a pearl white, that would be an excellent choice. And then on clearer bodies of water or some sunny days, I will go with like a see-through option, something more transparent, still in that shad pattern look, but some of those ghost type patterns, that's gonna work really well. And lastly, if you have smallmouth in your body of water, if you are not fishing this color, you're making a huge mistake, and that color is called wabi-sabi. It has other names as well, but the 6th Sense version is that color. Translucent sides, purple back, and that chartreuse belly really draws them up from deep water. They love chartreuse, so they will come a long way for this jerkbait. They absolutely love that thing. If you want to get any of those 6th Sense jerkbaits, you can help the channel out a ton. If you use my code Quince on 6th Sense website, you'll get 10% off your entire order, and you'll be able to give some of those jerkbaits a shot this spring and have you catching a bunch of fish in no time. So let's jump into number 2 here. One of my favorites as well, whether I'm pond fishing or fishing for smallmouth or on a lake, This is one that I love to have for when I'm just fishing to get a lot of bites. A lot of times in that early spring, late winter time period, those fish can be very, very hard to catch, especially when that water is cold. So sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and throw a finesse bait, catch a bunch of fish, or at least get some bites. You might not catch the biggest fish in the lake. You might not catch the most amount of fish. But if you're out there suffering through 30 and 40-degree temperatures trying to catch fish, I want to catch fish. So that's when I'm going to go to a Ned rig. There are two options here when I'm picking for my Ned rig head, and it's going to depend on the type of cover I'm fishing. If I'm fishing a lake, it has scattered gravel, sand flats. A lot of this grass has died off this time of year. Usually fishing like open water, I'm going to go with that traditional mushroom head that has the open hook. I pour these myself. I put a 2/0 Gamakatsu hook in here. That is the way that I'm going to go, just because I'm going to get a better hookup. These fish are going to nip this very lightly. They might not be committing to the bait entirely, so that open hook is very important to get a very good hook set on these fish. You might not get the best hook set, so if they come over and just kind of slurp that up a little bit, you can get a good hook set than if you have a weed guard. Now, this is my second choice if I'm fishing in two different places. One, largemouth bass in brush piles. They love brush piles that are offshore up here in the Northeast when the water's cold. That's where they winter at. That's where you'll catch them ice fishing. That's where the bluegills are that they're going to eat. You cannot fish this open hook design through a brush pile. You will literally get snagged every single time. You'll just lose a bunch of jig heads. These are big brush piles. They're like Christmas trees that are sunken down there, a bunch of brush all scattered together. You're gonna lose a lot of jigs if you do that. So this one right here is the 6th Sense weedless Ned football head jig. The weedless design comes through the brush pile much better. So you can fish it through those brush piles and get a lot of bites. That's very key on those places when those fish aren't gonna move very far. You can't miss the brush pile and drag it along the side with the open hook and have those fish come get it. You have to have that jig in the brush pile. So that's when I'm gonna go to that one. The other option is when I'm fishing rocky rivers with current for smallmouth bass, or just big chunk rock places, riprap or anything like that. That football head design is going to come through a lot better, especially in current and rocks, but any type of big chunky rock, it's going to work its way a lot better through that type of cover, and you're not going to lose as many jigs. The downfall with this bait is that it has that weed guard, and while you could cut it off, you're going to snag more jigs if you do. So this is when I need to, like, if I'm losing a ton of jigs, I'm going to go to this guy just to keep some baits and keep some jig heads. You might lose a couple fish in the process because of that weed guard. You might not get the best hook set on these fish that are gently picking up the bait, but that's what you're gonna have to do to catch some fish. But those are the two Ned rig heads that I really like to have. And then when it comes to bait selection, there's only one. It is the Z-Man TRD. Especially in the winter, you want that bait to stand up on the bottom. Fish that thing slow, let that thing sit there in those fish's face. They will come grab it. Don't overcomplicate your color selection. I have a bunch here, but realistically, green pumpkin or green pumpkin goby, depending on if you want some color in your bait. I like the plain green pumpkin, but if you have a lot of bluegill and stuff in your lake, that green pumpkin goby is an excellent color with that purple and gold flake in there. And yoga pants if you have some dirty water. Yoga pants is just straight black. Those are the only two colors that I fish. Honestly, if I wanted to get one pack of baits, it would be these green pumpkin gobies right here. I'd fish them everywhere, especially up here in the Northeast, but all over the country. That color is amazing, and it just catches fish flat out. So if you really want to keep it simple in the winter, Ned rig jig head, green pumpkin goby TRD, you will catch fish. You just have to fish slowly and where you know those fish live, and soak that bait in there, and you will get a lot of bites. So that's one of my go-tos when I'm just trying to get some bites out there while I'm fishing. The last one, this is one of my favorites, and it's such an exciting way to fish in February, just because you're so used to fishing those finesse techniques or twitching a jerkbait and letting it sit there for a long period of time. This gets you a little bit of movement, a little bit more excitement, but it can be condition specific. This is going to be a crankbait, but is not any crankbait. There's only one, and it is the Rapala Shad Rap. So the Rapala Shad Rap is the only one crankbait that I will fish in the month of February. It's the first crankbait I fish as soon as the ice comes off the water up here. The coldest water conditions, this crankbait will work. There's two size options to choose from. The 5 and the 7, there is more in the lineup, and if you wanted to get some of the others, you could, but these two will cover your bases. The 5 will be good for like 4 to 5 foot of water if you're fishing it pretty shallow, or if you have some finicky fish or some small fish. This is a very small crankbait. The 7 will still work in that 4 foot range, but you'll get out to like that 7-8 range as well. So if you need that crankbait to get a little bit deeper, that's when I'm gonna pick up the 7 and start throwing that one. Neither of these will throw on a bait caster. You could possibly throw the 7, but you're gonna fight the wind more than you would just have fun fishing it. Honestly, if you just put these on a spinning rod, you'll enjoy it a lot more. They cast a little bit better. They're not going to cast good. They are very hard to cast. There's no denying that whatsoever. It's a balsa wood bait with absolutely no weight in it. But they catch fish because they have the tightest wiggle of all crankbaits out there. When I say it's condition specific, you'll notice one, I have 2 colors here. Shad pattern and a craw pattern, and that's it. So if your water's dirty, I'm gonna go with the craw pattern. If your water's clean and those fish are still chasing shad, which they do a lot of times in the winter because crawfish are still hibernating, that's when I'm gonna go with the shad pattern. I usually don't fish this craw pattern because I think the fish are eating crawfish. I fish it because the water's so dirty and it's the only thing that will stand out in that dirty water because it's very bright and has a lot of contrast. But usually, bass are eating a lot of bait fish this time of year just because those crawfish are still hibernating. Now, when it's technique or condition specific, you want to find the sunniest bank and you want to fish it the latest in the day that you can. So what will happen is the sun will come up, it'll start hitting a bank, let that sun hit that bank all day long. It's going to warm that bank up, whether it's the rock, the mud, whatever's up there. It will warm up what is on that bank and hold just a little bit of heat, and that water will be a degree or 2 warmer than everything else. Those fish will flood to that bank and chase bait down there. The bait fish will be there. They will just hang out there because the water's warmer. If it's really warm enough, maybe the crawfish might crawl out just a little bit on that bank to get out. You never know what could happen. Sometimes those banks will just come alive on a sunny, calm day after you've had a big cold front, or the fish have been pent up all winter offshore waiting to move up. These are the first fish that are going to move up for pre-spawn. They're actually pre-spawn fish. They're going to move up faster than everything else. Those are going to be the ones that you're going to catch on a crankbait. You can just fish this thing, bounce it off everything down there on the bottom. It's not going to catch you a ton of fish, but it will catch you some fish in that cold water and be a different way to fish than everything else. I've caught a lot of fish in ponds, fishing the rock banks that might be the dam of the pond. Let that get a bunch of sun, go fish it the last 2 hours of the day, and throw this. I've caught a bunch of fish going down the bank. You might not catch a ton, 100 bass in a day or anything like that, but you might be able to go out there and catch 4 or 5 bass before the sun goes down because they've been heating up all day and they're going to flock to those rocks and just kind of hang out and chase bait. So that's an excellent one. I love fishing it. Really only comes out this time of year, and then I put them away for the rest of the year. So it's more of a specialty bait. But if you want to grab a couple, like I said, that's your selection right there. A 5 and a 7 in a craw and a shad pattern. You'd need like 4 baits and you're good to go. And you can give these a shot and catch a bunch of fish this winter. So hopefully you guys enjoyed these February baits. If you want to see my January bait selections as well, those ones will work on top of these selections. Give that video a check. If you enjoyed today's video, leave a like down below and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my videos coming up. Thanks for watching.